I also made the case for owning Bitcoin, the quintessence of scarcity premium. It's literally the only large tradable asset in the world that has a known fixed maximum supply. By its design, the total quantity of Bitcoins cannot exceed 21 million.
Bitcoin is the hardest money that has ever been invented.
If you don't have my private key, you cannot spend my Bitcoin, period. And this is the power of Bitcoin.
It's the first time we figured out how to create true property that you can take possession of with full custodial rights.
What's going on, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Talking in Bits, where we walk you through Bitcoin bit by bit so we can provide you with the information you need to succeed and persist. Back with episode 62, got John Carvalho in the house, CEO of Synonym. What's going on, John?
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on the show. You were definitely, as I told you a few minutes ago, on the bucket list, man, and this is just a pleasure to have you here, man.
Happy to be here.
Cool. John, so I usually like to, let the guests, kind of tell us a little bit about themselves and, specifically their Bitcoin story. And I find that, the longer the person has been in Bitcoin, the more fascinating this story is. You're no different. You're one of the OGs here. Can you let the listeners know a little bit about yourself and your Bitcoin story?
Sure. Pretty soon, later this year, I'll have been in Bitcoin for 10 years. I started in late 2012, and I started, basically by hearing about the Silk Road. And so I heard that people were buying drugs online, and I was like, how the hell are they doing this? And I started researching and learning more about Bitcoin. After that, it was like every single month since then, I just fall deeper and deeper and deeper into the rabbit hole. Like Bitcoin is like everything. It's my career. It's my hobby. I've made it like a big part of my life. And so, I've been through a part of so many parts of Bitcoin's history. I wasn't there from the very beginning, but, I've been through all the ups and downs. I've been, pretty much made poor and made rich and poor again by Bitcoin. I've been scammed. I've been through all of it in different ways. And so it's hard for me to like give you a whole history with it without rambling on forever, but, just to say, like, I've done some mining, I did some trading, I had my own, project where we were doing a video streaming website with tipping for Bitcoin. I worked at Bitrefill, and now we have our own company where we're making like a Bitcoin ecosystem. And that's the latest thing with Synonym. And so if you have any specific questions about different things, I'm sure, any part in history, I could tell you what I was doing, but that's the short version.
Yeah, well, I think the natural question that I had there is like, you said you went through Bitrefill, you had a tipping service for video, which, as a creator, I'm super interested in where that has been because I haven't really seen a good outlet for that now. But a good question is before we get into Synonym and all the work that you guys are doing there is, how did all that experience with Bitrefill and doing all those other projects, how did that set you up for what you're doing now in Synonym?
I would say that, it's always been a process. Like, in the early years of Bitcoin, like I kept trying to find my way to contribute and be a part of it without just only being a trader or just talking on Twitter all day, And when you're not a programmer, which I'm not, and some people have that misconception that I'm a developer or something, I'm not. When you're not that, it's difficult for you to find a place and figure out, because most of the culture is about like contributing to Bitcoin Core or making an app, et cetera. And so most of my life, I've been involved in making products and doing design and branding and, marketing related things. So, I used to be in a band when I was young and I had my own record label. And so I've just always had experience with making some kind of product, but more on the creative side. And so at first, I had gotten a divorce. And this was like 2016. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to start my first real Bitcoin project. And so I partnered with this guy in Romania to do a cam girl website that used Bitcoin as the payment method. And that was pretty interesting and I still think relevant, but things didn't go so well. I was my first time kind of making a commercial like application on the web. Previously, I'd mostly like made websites for like small businesses, like brochure kind of websites, static websites. And this is like the first time I was trying to do a platform, and I learned a lot about video. I learned a lot about the adult industry. and just all the challenges there. And basically, I came to a realization that like you need to have a significant budget to be able to approach that industry properly. And to do a video platform is like basically one of the hardest things you could choose to start with. And so I kind of was faced with a decision where I had to decide either to try and raise money, like as a startup, which is something I never actually did before, because I was using my own money, and so I was basically ran out of money, and I had to make a decision. I was like, am I going to go out and do the startup thing and make a pitch deck and try to raise money, or am I going to try to get a job? And so I incidentally bumped into the CEO. That didn't bump into, but we incidentally had a conversation with the CEO at BitRefill, and we agreed to try working there. And so I kind of put the video project aside and started working at BitRefill, doing marketing and communications related stuff as their chief communications officer. And that led me to learning a lot about doing business development in the Bitcoin world and doing product management. I have a lot of experience in history doing like project management, but now it's kind of mixing all these roles together. And Sergey was nice enough to kind of give me enough rope to hang myself, and I made the most of it. And so as I did that, I established relationships with Paulo at Tether and other people in the industry. And that just basically led to me having a lot of ideas about things that Bitcoin needs and ways to kind of improve the Bitcoin, ecosystem. And so I started thinking about ways that I could do that through the lens of BitRefill. And then it just got to be too different from BitRefill to be able to do it there. And so I started talking to Paulo. I said, hey, is there a way that, we can start a new company and do all of this stuff with you and, basically funded by Tether? And he agreed. And so I spent, a few months basically designing a new company and making a new vision. And that is what, became Synonym. And so we were in stealth mode for 20 months, almost 2 years. And then we announced the company last November, and we're still trying to release our first products, but we have open source a lot of the stuff that we've used as building blocks. And we just have a lot of things that we still want to release and we're still kind of juggling and working on. And so, yeah, that's how I got to where I am now.
Yeah, I got you. You got definitely a dose of, different experiences, especially like you said in the product lead and management. And then, yeah, you were able to tap in. Now, do you think, in your opinion, that, I guess it can happen in any industry, but do you think your laser focus on Bitcoin is what kind of got you in the room with these individuals that you said kind of connected you and kind of propelled you forward? Or without Bitcoin, do you think you would have been successful in that same fashion?
I don't know. I mean, you don't get to see two realities. You only get to see the one you choose. So it's easy to have regrets or have what ifs if you start thinking that way. But that's just not how life works. You don't get to take it back. And I am very proud and happy of where I am today with what I'm able to be working on and the people I'm able to be working with. And so that makes me very hesitant to take any of it back or explore if I had done things differently, because everything so far that what I care about in Bitcoin, this is exactly where I want to be. So I'm happy with that aspect. I would say, of course, being in the Bitcoin world for, some years ends up making you better positioned to, be in continued Bitcoin roles and continuing rising up the ladder of Bitcoin roles. But, I think that what got me my job at BitRefill was my normal career background. And then BitRefill allowed me to kind of learn to express that within a Bitcoin context. And that helped, align me with Paulo Arduino at Tether and Bitfinex, and kind of get to know more people like him to do a lot of the projects that ended up kind of bringing us together to create Synonym.
Yeah. Now, right before we go into Synonym, I've never heard of the approach of, and this could be common and I'm just ignorant, but of a stealth startup where you said you were working for about 2 years there. What is that by design, and what is the benefit of going stealth when you're trying to put something together?
I would say I probably don't have, I probably can't make much more claim than you about knowing about it. It just felt like the right thing to do for various reasons. So like I had heard of the idea like, oh, this company has been in stealth mode, but I don't even remember which company it was. And it's certainly from outside of the Bitcoin world. But the way it felt to me was that I didn't want to go out and make claims and say what we were going to be doing when it kept changing every few months and evolving. And when we weren't even close to shipping anything. And so the stealth mode was not really strategic in the sense of that we had a really like unique thing that we were scared to share with people or they would steal it. That wasn't really the reason. The reason was I didn't want to go out and say, this is what we're doing and then change what we're doing and be wrong or look, immature or half baked. And so I wanted to make sure that we at least had, evolved enough to where we were coherent in what we were trying to say to people. And even today, like explaining what we're doing is not very easy, and getting people to kind of grok the entire vision is it's work. It's not easy. But we all as a team understand it a lot better and become much better at working together and doing it. And so the stealth mode thing was partly like, just I didn't want to look stupid and I didn't want to make false claims or immature claims. And I just wanted to, be able to actually be closer to being able to put something in people's hands when we did announce. And so I got invited to speak at the El Salvador conference, right after there was so much hype with them doing the legal tender thing with Bitcoin. And I was like, okay, like I have to use this as an excuse to finally like come out of stealth mode, because what else am I going to talk about? I'm not going to go on stage and just like, bullshit about Bitcoin. I'm going to, everybody's going to want to know what the hell I've been teasing for the past 2 years,
Yeah, I do like that approach. I think, way too often in and out of Bitcoin, I think, like companies always bite off more than they can chew, make a lot of empty promises. An easy recent example for me personally was just the whole Compass situation with the mining and taking people's money months ahead of time. And to me, it goes back to like what basically what you said. If you're not prepared to release something to the people, then why be talking about it? Yeah, I was very interested when you said stealth mode, because I actually think that that's a smart move ultimately.
There were downsides. Like, for example, it was really hard to hire people. And so I did get pretty lucky with the first few people that we hired, because I had like my own network and Twitter and things like this. So I was able to like connect with some people that either knew me or knew people that knew me. And so there was a lot of appropriateness to the people, because they obviously had some alignment with how I see things, because they don't have me blocked. And so, but it was very difficult to be like, making a blog post on my personal blog saying that we're hiring for some company that has no name and we can't quite tell you exactly what we're doing. That was difficult. And that was actually one of the major reasons we did announce the company when we did, was because it was just too difficult to continue scaling the company up without telling people what the hell it was and showing people what we are.
Right. Now, in the world of open source development, did you also bump into the situation where you guys had like something really hot and then, because somebody else was more public, they kind of beat you to the punch?
Not really. I mean, some of the stuff we're doing, it's tricky. Like on one hand, there is a lot of quote unquote competition on certain things that we're doing and certain things that we were doing early that other people were also doing around the same time. And that's true even today. But competition is a little bit different in open source. It's more like, what's the word? Like opportunity cost. Like if two people are working on the same thing independently, then but there's not really much differentiation. It's kind of like somebody is wasting their time, right? Like you're just doubling effort unnecessarily. And so I've always kind of told myself, I don't really need to be the one to make all the things that we need. And so to try to do enough research to see if somebody else is building the things we need. And we did that, like, for example, with like how we use hypercore, and like how we are trying to do like instant tokens. Like we didn't build those protocols ourselves. We found the best one and implemented it, within the best one that actually works, and implemented it within our stack. And so I'm not going to go and try to build everything and do redundant work. But yeah, as far as like secrets or being beat to the punch, not really, because all of the people, the most like kind of innovative or risky thing we're doing is like the Slashtags protocol, which is sort of like a lot of the Web3 narratives, but without the shitcoins. And so all the shitcoin people are attaching shitcoins and weird narratives to as competition. And so we always differentiate in that way where our motives are, for better or worse, and for lack of modesty, our motives are always purer than most people's. And so we're always trying to like find what is the most efficient way to do this? What is the least bullshit way to do this? What is the best way for the user? What is the, do we actually need to use Bitcoin at all for this? Do we need to use a blockchain? And, and this made us really evaluate, and you'll see on our website, we have like these design principles, which are like rules that we use for how we make decisions about what we include in our software. And like one of them, for example, is we will not use any blockchain but Bitcoin. And so that means we won't use shitcoins, we won't use side chains, we won't use any type of design that requires an additional blockchain, because our understanding of blockchains is that they don't scale. And so there's no reason to add a blockchain to a blockchain. It just doesn't fix anything.
Yeah, at worst, it just makes it even slower. Is that safe to say?
Potentially, or just you're just like you're either scaling Bitcoin or you're competing with Bitcoin. And so my view is that if it's a blockchain, it's competing with Bitcoin. It doesn't matter if they want to make some kind of loose claim that it's on Bitcoin or that it helps kill shitcoin. So I don't care. It's just no matter what you do, if it happens on your blockchain, it means it's not happening on the Bitcoin blockchain.
Yeah. Now, is this I don't know if it's a good segue in that. So that leads me to the, you guys pulling off the first USDT over the Lightning Network. Is that same concept where it's like we can get Tether and we can actually use it on the Bitcoin blockchain instead of elsewhere?
Yeah, it's an example. Like when I was researching different ways to make, like one of the ways that I met Paulo and ended up connecting with him is that I was working at BitRefill and I had an idea for a product that would require basically having Lightning tokens, instant tokens. And so I asked a few people if this was actually possible and did some research, and they pointed me to a different protocol, the RGB protocol. And we ended up funding that protocol further to be able to like make it Lightning compatible. And that whole project, that's a whole other story, but that project kind of like blew up in our faces in a way. And so we were like, okay, well, if this isn't going to work, what is the next most practical thing? What's something we can actually get out there? And I started researching, and really the only thing I could find was these layers that people had kind of neglected on Bitcoin, like the Omni layer. And there was already a team that was making a fork of Lightning to be able to like understand Omni layer abstractions to be able to create channels out of them. So that team has been working on their Lightning implementation for a while, and so we ended up learning, how to implement all of this stack, and ended up making some libraries so you could make it possible to include these in applications. And so, so that demonstration we did was just to show that like with existing protocols right now, while it's not quite production ready, there's risks there. It is definitely the most baked thing out there to be able to do instant tokens that are scalable, because it takes advantage of both Lightning and Bitcoin, and you don't need some sort of like base layer token, to pay fees. You don't need, some sort of extra blockchain to like, or trusting a federation, like a side chain. You can just, make Bitcoin transactions that include information about token transactions and make Lightning channels out of them. And that was what we were demonstrating, what Corey was showing everybody with that video that we made, where we took the pre-existing, USDT on Omni, on the Omni layer, and made a channel out of it and did transactions in that channel.
Yeah, I'm not versed on Omni. Can you give me like a quick TLDR on the Omni layer? Is that just another version of Lightning, or?
Because Lightning is unique in that Lightning requires Lightning is like literally peer-to-peer, unlike Bitcoin. Like Bitcoin is more like of a broadcast setup where everybody gets the same message, and so everybody resolves and is like basically maximally redundant. But Lightning, it's like you have your perspective of your Lightning network, and anybody that you can connect to via liquidity is how you can send payments. But if you don't have a route to someone, they're not in your network and you can't pay them. And so it's not a global network, kind of like how Bitcoin works. And so the difference with Omni is that Omni is like, it literally is Bitcoin transactions. The difference is that there's a feature in Bitcoin called op return, where you can include like custom information in the transaction. So what Omni does is it takes the op return data and it encodes its own data inside of it. And so it puts in like these numbers that are like a representation of data in what an Omni node will be able to understand. So Omni nodes look at the Bitcoin blockchain and they look for these encoded op returns that are encoded in the way that they understand. And then they parse those transactions and they see what's inside of them. And so you can use Bitcoin transactions to embed these Omni token transactions. And so it's kind of like this meta token layer that sits inside of Bitcoin transactions.
Oh, that's incredible. Is it a hard like on ramp onto Omni network, or is it just as easy as spinning up a node?
It depends on what you consider hard. I mean, some people think running a node is hard. I haven't actually personally ran an Omni node, so I can't really personally tell you whether it's more difficult than running a Bitcoin node. But I would say it literally is like a fork of a Bitcoin node, and so it should be very similar to run a Bitcoin node. And then Omni Bolt is literally a fork of LND, so it should be very similar to running, a Lightning node. And so you need these two things to be able to do the tokens and separately if you want to do Lightning capabilities. So yeah, I would say, I don't know how difficult it is, in practice because I haven't done it myself, but there's a lot of similarities to how you would use the existing stack in Bitcoin.
Yeah, gotcha. That's a new project I got to look into for sure. Well, new for me, not new for everybody else apparently.
I'll say like, to be fair, a downside of this design is that like, even though you can scale transactions in Lightning, in using OmniBolt, the downside here is that that Bitcoin still doesn't really scale, and so you ultimately have to now pay Bitcoin fees to be able to create token transactions. And so if Bitcoin becomes very expensive, like say it costs $200 to put it on to do an on-chain transaction, it could make unpopular tokens. Like they could become obsolete because people won't be able to afford that. Like, I don't want to pay $200 to be able to receive, I don't know, $50 in gift card credit or something, And so it means that as Bitcoin grows, only larger types of transactions will be, realistic, because if you're going to pay $200, you probably want at least, $2,000 or $20,000 of tokens to be in that transaction, which really limits who would do this,
Yeah, so the incentive is not there. Is kind of what that sounds like for people to massively use it.
But Bitcoin has the same problem. In other words, to be fair, if you won't want to send $50 of Bitcoin either if the transactions cost $200. So that's what Lightning is partially trying to solve, is that instead of doing a lot of on-chain transactions, you make one or two channels, and those are expensive, but now you reuse them over and over.
Gotcha. I do want to circle into now that we're speaking about Lightning. You hinted earlier that you can probably remember every single point, and well, not every single point, but your past in Bitcoin. I want you to with all the news that's coming out with all the new Lightning implementations. Something stood out to me in a recent podcast that you're on where you said that people think that there's only one Lightning network, and that kind of hit me because although I know of a few different implementations, it still kind of feels like it's one network for me. Can you dig a little deeper into that? What you were saying?
Sure. So it's important for people to understand this because there are going to be narratives as Lightning evolves that conflict with this, and people will be uncomfortable and not understand why that this is happening. And there are going to be conflicts. There are going to be incompatibilities because unlike Bitcoin, Lightning is not a globally enforced protocol. If you break the rules in Lightning, you don't get forked out. You just can't do that specific thing unless somebody else in the network understands that. In other words, if you try to do something new, that is not typical, not common in the protocol, not common on the network, then only people that know how to do that new thing are the only people that will be able to do that new thing with you. But it doesn't like eject you from the network like it would with Bitcoin. Like you don't fork the asset, you don't end up on a different blockchain. You just end up, because it's a layer and it's off chain. So it's like there are a lot of different aspects of Lightning Network. And like, for example, like communication, storage, routing, invoicing, and all of these things are modular. And the only reason they are interoperable is that everybody agrees for them to be interoperable individually. And so, like I said to you earlier, like it's not that there's one Lightning Network. It's that there's your view of the Lightning Network, which is essentially it's your Lightning Network. And so your Lightning Network is whatever you can see. And so the reason why there's more than one Lightning Network, and the reason why you have to not think of it as one global network, is because, first of all, you can't just send a payment to anyone unless you actually have a route to them. If you don't have a route to them, they're literally not in the same network as you. It doesn't matter that they're using the same protocol as you, because I can open channel to you, and you can open channel to my mom, and my mom can open a channel to my cousin, and we can get Shane in there. But if we don't connect to anybody else, it's just going to be like the 4 or 5 of us, and that's going to be our Lightning Network. And we don't have to connect to the rest of the Lightning Network. We can be separate. And if we stay separate, we can start making our own rules. We can start adding features that no other Lightning Network node supports. We can add tokens in there if we want. We can do whatever we want. It doesn't, as long as when we settle our Lightning channels, that the Bitcoin network understands what we're doing. And so whatever we do off chain, Bitcoin doesn't care. And nobody that's in our network cares either. And so you have to keep that. Like, Lightning is a method. So Lightning is basically taking a thing that you could do with one peer, just 2 people. It's opening a channel with somebody else and agreeing on the starting state of that channel, and then modifying that state over and over and over until we're done doing business together. And that's what a Lightning channel is. And this technology predates and has existed for years before the Lightning Network existed. It's just that in order to make it actually interesting, the Lightning Network was created to be able to attach these channels together and kind of do these atomic transactions where you could prove that if I send you Bitcoin in our channel, that you will also send Bitcoin to somebody that you in a channel that I don't have with them, but you have with them. And this creates a routing network. And this is why you have these like liquidity problems and balancing problems and things like this, because whenever you send money, it ends up acting sort of like it's like transitive. Like I tap out my channel with you and you tap out your channel with somebody else, and everything kind of is a wave of money that moves one channel at a time. But the Bitcoin never leaves our channel. And so it's still made out of, 2 peers and then 2 other peers. And so the Bitcoin in our channel never leaves our channel. It just gets kind of accounted for in a separate channel when you route. And so this is what I mean by there not being one Lightning Network, because Lightning is just a method of, making channels compatible and creating subnetworks. And so the subnetworks can each have their own rules. They can share rules. They can have totally different rules. And so I think there will be multiple Lightning networks, and they might even be many Lightning networks. And there might even be Lightning networks that are totally not interoperable, because it's just a method, and you can define the rules of that method as long as, like I said, you can settle to Bitcoin in the end.
Yeah. So in this view of like your Lightning network and not somebody else's Lightning network, I could see where those routing payments would fail. And I was kind of more curious, and I don't know if you can answer this or not. It's probably by giving up your sovereignty, but like, why on like a Zeus wallet, when we're trying to use the Lightning network, if our channels are not correct, that's usually a fail, but we can somehow pick up a Cash App, right? And then these transactions always seem to go through without failing. Is that because you're being exposed to their network and not your own? How does that work? Pretty
much. Like Cash App is a custodial. In other words, you don't hold your own keys in Cash App for your Lightning. It's their node that you're using, and you have an account with their server. And so they basically have a centralized version of Lightning where they just have one node. And because they're pretty much operating as a hub, and they hold all the Bitcoin, there's less liquidity problems. So like, in other words, they can have a 5 Bitcoin channel with Bitfinex and a 5 Bitcoin channel with Blue Wallet and a 5 Bitcoin channel with Bitrefill, and all of these kind of endpoints that people tend to use, and they can afford to remain very liquid and very well connected. I don't know how, honestly, I haven't used it, so I don't know how well connected they actually are. But this is like how the Lightning Network works in an economic perspective. Like economically, all the hubs want to be connected to all the hubs because they become like the kind of highway system of the Lightning Network. And when you do something like, you run your own node and you make a channel with somebody like in Plebnet. Well, Plebnet is, if nobody in Plebnet is connected to Cash App or Bitfinex or Bitrefill, then you're kind of in a private network with all the plebs. And so that's only useful if you're trying to pay people in that network. But if you're trying to pay somebody outside the network, then that's not useful. It's more useful to have a channel with a hub instead.
Gotcha. So the ultimate trade-off in Bitcoin, as usual, security and sovereignty for ease and convenience. It's what's happening here. So you can go to Cash App and do it off a whim, but you're giving up the keys.
You can have both.
Okay.
Because with Lightning, what I'm saying is, the difference between Cash App and running your own node, you can still do that. In other words, I'm saying with your Zeus wallet, with that node that you control, that you're connecting to, because Zeus is a remote app, as far as I know, it doesn't have a node inside. You have to like tell it which node to connect to. Well, that node is your node, as far as I know. And so if you're already running your own Lightning node, what you have to do is you have to manage who you're making a channel with. You have to be more thoughtful about it. You have to say, okay, I'm not gonna bother trying to, connect to as many people in Plebnet as possible, because I never have to pay those people, if that's true. And so if you're never having to make payments to people in Plebnet, then you say, who am I trying to make payments to, and who are they connected to? And so you have to make sure you have a route. So you say, when I take the time to buy a channel, I should buy it from a hub, or I should, connect to a hub, because that'll make it much more likely that somebody I'm trying to pay also has a connection to that hub.
Gotcha. Okay. So if you do all the heavy lifting, all the potential is there for you to be able to do the same thing.
Yeah, you can still hold your keys. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas Cash App, you're not holding your keys. With Cash App, you're holding your password, and you're trusting them to hold that Bitcoin for you and make payments.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I got to lean towards the more. I've been, running a Lightning node for quite some time since I found out about Value for Value podcasting. But yeah, I've noticed that even smaller transactions.
The same thing is true. Same thing's true with Chivo. The same thing is true with Strike. Like these are like they use Lightning for their own business purposes. They're custodial applications, and that you just have an account with them. So your self sovereignty is not there. Your censorship, resistance is not there when you're using these custodial, essentially exchange accounts. That's basically how they work when it comes to Lightning. And there are actually very few Lightning wallets that are popular that allow you to hold your own node, and even fewer that have a node in the application, because Lightning is actually still pretty early, and the designs and what's available for app builders to make self-custodial user experiences is pretty limited.
Guys, we've got a ways to go there. So like with all these different Lightning networks and I see them conflicting down the road. It kind of sounds like it's one of these things. Does the Slashpay, what you guys are working on, kind of like make a neutral ground for all these different versions of Lightning? So basically, I wouldn't have to worry about what implementation or what protocol of Lightning I'm using. I could still make that successful payment, or is that way off on that?
No, you're on the right path. I would say it does not totally solve everything with that with that kind of, and there's a whole spectrum of problems within that problem, but it does solve a fair amount of that spectrum, but not the entire spectrum. Because what Slashpay is it's a payment negotiation protocol. So it's a way of like two peers being able to tell each other which languages they speak when it comes to payments. And so it's like, okay, and I don't mean languages in any literal way. I just mean it in a figurative way. But it's like saying, with Slashpay, instead of you giving me a Lightning invoice and then you saying, well, I don't have a route to you, or I don't even have a Lightning channel, or I don't even have a Lightning wallet, like then we're done, right? It's just a failed thing. But, or instead of saying, oh, well, can you close your channel and send me on-chain Bitcoin? Or can you pay me cash? Instead of a failure mode, what I can do is I can say, I can pay you over Slashpay, and I can say, look, here are the payment methods I support. Here, and you can say, here are the payment methods I support, and we can see if we have a match. And so this allows you to basically, coordinate which type of payment methods you want to support with your peers, and this way then to find a solution. And so if you support, say you have both Lightning and Bitcoin, and maybe your Bitcoin is also, SegWit, your wallet supports SegWit and native SegWit, but my wallet only supports legacy Bitcoin and and Lightning. Then when we look at each other's supported methods, we're going to choose Lightning because I don't support SegWit in my wallet, and my wallet's too old, but maybe I do support Lightning. And so Slashpay is just a way of coordinating and negotiating which method to pay, which methods you support, and then your priority of your preferences. So if say there's two matches, we both support two things, maybe I rank one higher than the other, and you rank the same one higher than the other, so we use that one. And so this is something that can be automated and handled by your application. You don't actually have to talk to the person. And what your user experience in your wallet is, I want to pay this guy $50, or I want to pay this guy 50,000 sats. You just choose what you want to happen in the end, and the application figures out the rest.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my next question. Would it be like a visual UI thing that says, I want to select this, or is it more automated and you guys choose the best route? So, but it seems like you answered that already. Now, what would Slashpay need to know about these different payment methods? Is it just a simple XPub? What would it need to know that I accept Bitcoin or that I accept Lightning? That type of information.
It would depend on each payment method, right? So, for example, an XPub would be something that you would need to be able to receive on-chain payments if you are offline, because Slashpay is an interactive protocol, and so you both need to be online to get optimal payment methods to have as many as possible. But if one of you is offline, then you need to either have a reusable address or have an XPub that is pulling from a list of addresses, or you need to have a custodian. Maybe you route your payments to a trusted payment processor when you're offline. There's a lot of ways you could handle it. And now Slashpay is just only a proof of concept at the moment. All of the stuff I'm talking about is what's possible if if you use this after it's matured and it's built out. And so we're going to put the first mature features within our own wallet app and kind of put this in people's hands so they can see how it's possible. And so this also mitigates talking about incompatibilities in Lightning. Well, for example, one popular topic right now is of tension is, we have something called Bolt 11, which is a standard way of making invoices, and we have a proposal for something called Bolt 12. And Bolt 12 isn't actually implemented, popular. It's not actually a standard because most implementations don't support it, and most wallets don't support it. It hasn't reached any sort of popularity. And so the standards process that developers typically like to use is it's kind of at a standstill, because it seems for example, Lightning Labs doesn't really care too much about Bolt 12, and they have their own vision of how to improve the invoicing method in Lightning. And so when there's conflict, what do? Well, you could just use Slashpay and just say, support whatever you want, and then if I don't support it, I'll pay you a different way, And this way, all of these payment methods can compete, and they don't have to argue. They can actually just compete with each other and see what becomes popular.
Yeah, I think that's extremely fascinating, and I'm looking forward to what you guys are rolling out there, because I think the more and more these inner battles happen inside of Bitcoin with the different protocols and implementations, that just makes the end user life just a nightmare, right? Nobody really, well, not anybody, but rarely do people have the same exact setup that are doing the same exact thing, and then that makes it hard on the app developers, because then it's how do we make this thing usable and still easy? Sounds like
it makes everybody's life a nightmare. Lightning is already so hard to implement for everybody, and then now if you're you're gonna have to always keep track of what the latest payment method is, and you have to decide whether to implement it yourself because it hasn't been approved as a standard. If this is the way it always is, it's a nightmare for everybody: the user, the developers, the managers, the investors. You're just always always trying to like roll the dice on what to put your resources into, and that sucks. And it would be better if you could just say, okay, well, at least we can all run, a meta payment method, like something like Slashpay. And then if there's an incompatibility, we can have fallback choices and say, okay, if Bolt 12 is not popular enough yet, then we just make a Bolt 11 invoice instead,
Yeah, that's damn. So what's the time frame? I know you got the mobile wallets coming out soon. Is it in the summer? I think that's how you announced that, or is that different?
That's the plan. When we announced the company, I said Q2, Q3, I think, or Q1, Q2, I think I said for the wallet. And that was maybe a bit ambitious because I would say recently I'm coming to terms with that. It being delivered by June 1st is probably unlikely. It's probably the first time I'm saying that publicly. But yeah, that roadmap is difficult because the longer we are not released, the less kind of committed we have to be to choices we've made in the design. And I'll give you an example. Like the way we were going to do Lightning in the wallet, we decided to completely gut it and change it a month ago. And so that means that adds a little bit of development time to be able to like redo work, to change what we're supporting in the wallet. Same thing is true for tokens. Like you just end up making different design choices, and because you're not actually released yet, you're not actually committed to anything yet. And so should we add a month to our roadmap and do it the way we think it should be done, or should we just not change and have technical debt and release it anyway? And I think the answer is to make it the proper way.
Yeah. And long term, do you obviously see it hopping outside of wallets, being like maybe embedded into a browser or things like that? Or you haven't?
Definitely. Like everything about Slashtags and any of the utilities that we make for it is they're all blockchain agnostic. Like you could use Slashpay for Ethereum, you could use Slashpay for PayPal if you wanted. Like the idea is that the users define and kind of communicate which payment methods they support. And if it's mutual, then you can pay over that method. And as long as you speak the same language, figuratively, you can pay however you want to. And so, yeah, basically anything that wanted to receive payments, the more we mature it, the more things we can add support to it for. But, economics dictate some of these decisions. Like we need people to actually use it to justify putting in the work. Like if it becomes really popular for Bitcoin and really popular for Lightning, then that gives us a lot of reasons to now like make it compatible with credit cards or, PayPal or something, because the more users you have, the more demands they have and the more interoperability they want.
Now, I'm sure you get this question often. If it's agnostic to the blockchain, how is security handled? Is that like on a peer-to-peer basis, or is it as secure?
There's no, I would say the question is maybe misformed. In other words, this is just a way of communicating with two people communicating. What's secure is when you get the payment. And so, in other words, say you used some like super bad shitcoin. If that shitcoin is insecure, then yeah, you have problems, you have risks. But if that shitcoin is not so bad and it's not attacked while you're using it, then Slashpay has no effect on the security, because all you're doing is you're saying, hey, here's how you pay me in this shitcoin. And the other person's saying, okay, I support that shitcoin, I'm going to pay you. And then they use the blockchain to send the payment. They don't rely on anything, from Synonym to be able to do that, or they don't rely on anything from some like non-blockchain, design. It's just that this is a coordination method.
Gotcha. Coordinator makes a ton of sense now. Yep, I understand. That's fantastic. So you can still just trust on the security of the protocol that you're exchanging value in, and then you don't have to trust Synonym in that process.
Yeah. Although, like, if you do something like PayPal, there's certainly a different trust model than a blockchain, and you might have more censorship problems. You might have to like authenticate in multiple ways because PayPal like wants you, they notice you're, in the wrong IP, and they think you're in a new location, and they want you to like, verify a text message. Like it could cause a lot of bad user experiences, if the more payment methods you support. So there's some practicality required.
Makes sense, definitely. Circling back to the USDT over Lightning. When you made that announcement, I saw a lot of people basically, and I was pretty ignorant to this as well. I didn't have a good answer. People were just basically saying, well, I can load up my Strike app with dollars right now and send them over the Lightning network. How is this any different? What's your take on that?
So the difference is that when you send dollars using Strike, especially depending on what country you're in, like for example, I think in Argentina, they're using Ethereum and they're using Tether to send the dollars, right? Mm-hmm. And so if I want to send dollars to somebody in that situation, I'm not only trusting Tether, I'm trusting Strike and I'm trusting Ethereum. And I'm trusting Bitcoin. So now you're trusting Bitcoin, you're trusting Lightning on Bitcoin, you're trusting Strike, and you're trusting Tether. And that none of those things will go wrong. But if you're sending, say, Bitcoin on Omnibolt, Tether on Omnibolt, you're trusting Tether, you're trusting Omnibolt, you're trusting Bitcoin. So basically, again, you're trusting Lightning, Bitcoin, and Tether. No matter what, when you use Tether, you have to trust Tether, right? Like that's just a prerequisite. It's a centrally held asset, and they create digital representations of the assets they hold. And so that is a credit instrument. And this is how all credit works. The difference is that like you have two kinds of money. You have like issued money that is just purely an abstraction, like dollars or Bitcoin or shitcoins. And then you have credit instruments like tokens, which are like they're redeemable for something specific defined by the issuer. And so, these are the two types of money. And I think these two types of money will always exist. You're always going to have a usefulness for trusting someone to use other people's assets. And so in the situation, like I could just use Strike. Well, there's a lot going on there. Like Strike, like I said, you're trusting an extra party, at least one extra party. And you are also incurring exchange fees because what Strike is doing, and maybe for now they're covering those fees. I think Strike is 0 fee. So I don't want to misrepresent them. I don't actually use Strike. So I don't want, if I say something wrong, it's not to be evil. But at some point somebody has to cover those fees, because what they're doing is they're saying, we're taking dollars, we're denominating them in Bitcoin, and then we're converting them to dollars again at the other end. I think because Strike controls both ends, there's not really a fee because they're just denominating it and they're just making sure they're accurate. And because it's happened so fast, there's very little exposure to volatility. But if Bitcoin drops, 10% in those 30 seconds that your transaction is happening, then Strike is taking a hit on that, but that's it's a very small amount of exposure. So it's probably not a problem. But all Strike is doing is they're using Lightning, not you. And so you're trusting them to relay this transaction. It's not happening on the blockchain. It's probably happening from one Strike node to another, or at least half of the equation is just a centralized Strike transaction. And so, yeah, you can do that, but that's like saying I can use my bank account to send you, I can use my Revolut card to, pay you with my Revolut app, and you can have those dollars in your account instantly as well. They're not actually settled till next week, and you're trusting Revolut, and you can be censored and all these things. But in the end, Strike is just basically it's like a PayPal company. You know what I mean? They're doing payment processing. They're not using like Swift or IBAN or these kinds of things as rails. They're using Lightning as rails, but they're using it, not you. So if you were using Tether on Lightning, then you're always having control of the keys to that bearer instrument. In other words, that claim that you have with Tether, you are always in control of it, and you're not adding another trusted person to the equation. And that's the difference. It's more self-sovereign. It's less censorable, etc.
Yeah, and the not to take into consideration the on-ramping that Strike is probably not available in your country anyways, and you're going to need to KYC yourself into having a connected bank account to be able to get those dollars into that Strike.
Very correct. I left those things out, but you're extremely right. That is a huge difference in that Tether on a blockchain is borderless and Strike is not borderless.
Yeah, so this is a good old-fashioned, Americans are just focused on the problems here and not around the globe.
Indeed, Americans seem to think America is the only place that exists sometimes.
I mean, that's what they spoon fed us forever since we were growing up. So it's one of those things. All right. Before we get off Synonym, and I only got a few more questions here to respect your time. I do know on your website you guys are pretty much just welcoming us to the atomic economy. Can you briefly just define atomic economy for us?
Sure. So like if you ask me what Synonym is, I would say, we're a company creating a post-hyper Bitcoinization ecosystem. And I would call that the atomic economy. And what that means is essentially, the simplest way I could put it is, the concept of a circular economy. And so, when people talk about hyper Bitcoinization, they talk about basically Bitcoin being the only money, or Bitcoin being at least the main store of value, the backing asset of everything. And you have like these memes like infinity over 21 million and things like this. Like they're just trying to say that Bitcoin is like the thing that is abstractly defining all value. And so that's what hyper Bitcoinization is. And then it also means that, you're going to have to presume that this means some sort of circular economy, because if Bitcoin is the only asset or the only store of value, then that means most people would be transacting in it. Now, there's a caveat there that, as I've done my own research, that I've learned that I just don't really believe that Bitcoin will ever be the only money. I think for on one hand, this is a separate topic, but on one hand, I think there will always be demand for an alternative. And so there will always be at least one counter currency, whether it be dollars or shitcoin, but there will always be at least one counter currency that people will want as competition. And so I think that's unlikely to go away. And then more importantly, there will always be the need for, capitalism, and thus the ability to trust other people and use other people's assets to accelerate the growth of your business. And so the most basic form of capitalism is this need that you have to, establish credit and issue credit. And so that was something in our design for this, like for Synonym and this atomic economy concept, is basically we need Bitcoin and the hyper Bitcoinization concept as the best store of value, the best money. And then we need some way of expressing and managing a credit system. And so how do we deal with the credit system? Well, credit system involves trust. And so that means now we have to basically digitize trust. And so the atomic economy is combining the concept of a circular economy with the design pattern that is called a web of trust. And so it's basically creating a digital economy out of webs of trust that are based on Bitcoin and credit. And so web of trust is a way that you can mutually define trust and with the counterparties. You can say, and I've given examples in other podcasts, and I don't want to ramble for too long because all you did was ask what atomic economy meant.
No, I love it. Go for it.
A web of trust is basically the major part of that design. So you need this web of trust, and in order to do a web of trust, you need things like a way to authenticate digitally and prove who you are as an abstraction as well. And so that's why we have Slashtags. Slashtags is a way of basically using keys for everything. And so we combine Bitcoin and Bitcoin technologies with Slashtags and Hypercore, which is sort of like BitTorrent, but cooler. I'll just leave it at that. To create this atomic economy, and this allows you to cover all of the use case. These things combined cover every single use case that you might need to cover to create an alternative digital economy that does not require big tech, big banks, or big government.
Oh, that's so ambitious, man. Are you guys the only one? I mean, what's the competition like? I guess is the core of the question. That's the most elegant way I've seen somebody explain, which is what I believe as well, which is going to be nearly impossible for Bitcoin to be the only thing out there. And I've never heard somebody explain it so well. Is there a lot of competition for what you guys got going on?
I would say because we're doing so many things, we have competitors in each area of what we're doing. But as far as people that are doing a very comparable stack to us, I would say there may be potentially just as much collaborators as competitors potentially, but Block is actually a great example. They have a stack that's looking more and more similar to the vision that we want to see happen, but they're also doing even more. They're doing, they're getting into like hardware wallets and mining, and I don't quite have, I'm ambitious, but I'm not that ambitious. But then again, they already have millions of users and billions of dollars, so they're in a little bit of a different situation than me. Maybe if I were in that position, I would be more ambitious, but I think I'm already overly ambitious as it is. And so we're focused more on a subset of their stack, which is like, they have like as a parallel to Slashtags and Hypercore, they're using like Ion and the TBD project, and they're probably going to use IPFS or something else. But in other words, they have a stack that kind of mirrors what we're doing with Slashtags and Hypercore in ways, although differentiated. Like they're more focused on like DEX than like I think that if we make this all properly, like everything is a DEX. So I'm not going to focus specifically on a trading DEX. And then they have Tidal, which is a content platform. We're also going to be building a content platform out of Slashtags and Hypercore. We're kind of just getting that started, hiring that team now. We have our wallets. They have Cash App. We have, I don't know what else are we doing. The token stuff, I guess they're not really doing either. But that, so there's no parallel there with then that case. But we have other competition in that area as well. And then social media, you have used to be part of their stack, but then Jack left Twitter. So and so Blue Sky is technically a Twitter project, but they're working on decentralized social media, and Slashtags and Hypercore will also enable that use case very, very well. And so this whole alternative economy is basically a social economy. And so, it requires things like webs of trust and Slashtags and, all these things I'm talking about.
Yeah, no, the perks of having endless pockets, I guess, is that problem that you guys are facing there, and they have the endless pockets. I actually am very interested because this podcast is value for value and sats being streamed. You guys coming out with a content platform. I've spoken on this show a ton of times that I think the Jay-Z Tidal, Jack relationship there is ultimately going to lead to, fuck the record labels, and these artists are now going to be able to get at least sats or something straightforward there. Is that the same vision that you guys got with your content platform that you're thinking about, or is it completely in a different direction?
I would say there will have to be similarities, because in the end, monetizing content is a good goal, and it's a mostly unsolved problem. You've seen pockets of success in this, like Bandcamp for a while used to work for people, and they used to be able to get some money, but there's like an incentive problem and a marketplace problem. And so Tidal, I don't know how successful it is, but I imagine it's doing okay. The big problem is, how do you establish a marketplace? Because that's why everybody wants to centralize. It's that they know that they'll get eyeballs on their stuff, they'll get ears on their stuff. And just because you give everybody the power to sell stuff does not mean that stuff will sell. Right. And the truth of the matter is that you always had the ability to sell your podcast or collect tips. So you could have, 10 years ago, you could put a PayPal button on your own website and ask people to PayPal you. But the problem is that tipping has like a ceiling on how much money you can make. How much people are willingly, going to voluntarily make an effort to pay you. And so you have to have we have to try things. We have to see how we can incentivize people to pay, what kind of, gamification we can create, what kind of reward we can create, whether it be intangible or literal. You have to you have to experiment and offer a lot of different monetization methods, so that way people can tailor their content to their audience and tailor their monetization methods to their audience, and thus create these marketplaces. And so, like, for example, a web of trust model, I think, is a great way to establish kind of a dynamic marketplace where people can kind of find what they're looking for through these kind of mutual definitions of things. And it maybe could be a much better way of targeting your audience and your audience targeting you, because it's like this, it's almost like an algorithm that is created by the users instead of created by Google. And so that could be a way to facilitate not a DEX, but, a kind of dynamic marketplace. But that's not as simple or as convenient as just like getting your new album on the front page of Tidal, or getting your new album, on the front page of Google Music or something. Like, if you can get exposure to an existing centralized marketplace, you're going to get a lot more, opportunity for people to now like your music and pay for it, or get paid for it through advertising and such.
Yeah. And the fairy tale of mine, well, I guess a certain aspect of it of mine, I would like to say that, taking ownership as a creator myself, then you just have to make the content be that much better. So you don't have these, like, what I call fiat shortcuts of like ending up on Apple's front page because the record label was able to put up X amount of dollars to get you there. And these like free marketplaces and that we can upload our content to. I like to think that the better creators are naturally just going to get more exposure. Would you agree with that or disagree with that?
I don't disagree with it. I just think that you can't only think that way. It's not enough to only think that way. I agree that good content should have a better chance of success, and probably will have a better content should have a better chance. But that is definitely not the only factor. Like, I remember I did work in the music industry for a time, and I worked in that industry when it was a lot easier than it is now. Mm-hmm. And what you have to remember is, with a more accessible market, you have more competition, and most people aren't as unique as they think they are. You know what I mean? They're like, if you start a metal band and now you go and put yourself on a metal band, category in every, music application, you're going to learn that there are a lot of metal bands, and a lot of them are pretty good, and a lot of them are better than your band, and already have a better audience. Like, there's a lot of competition out there. Things are very accessible. And so a lot of people want to hate on like the record label or hate on advertising. But the problem is, these things serve a purpose. They didn't get created because humans are evil. They get created because they serve a purpose. Yes, people leverage their monopolies on things like this to exploit people and take advantage, but the actual design of them is not evil. The actual purpose of them is not like backwards. The purpose is that in order to get your music into people's hands, to get into people's ears, you need help. And you can't do everything yourself. You can't be the best guitarist, the best singer, the best drummer, the best promoter, the best designer, the best, mixer, the best recorder. You can't do everything. You need people, you need trust, you need cooperation. And so that's what labels ultimately provide, is like, when you say they had enough money to pay to get you on the front page, that means that they had enough, network and enough resources and they were willing to put enough risk into giving you a chance because your quality of your music or that, they think you're harmonizing with the market at the moment.
Damn. Well said. Just let me hate the record labels, John. Don't don't take that away from me.
Well, everybody needs help, man. Like, everybody, you can't do everything alone. And yeah, I don't think you should sell your soul to somebody that's going to exploit you. Like, in other words, yeah, record labels are known for basically saying, I'm going to make a lot of money off of you and not share it with you. And that's shitty. But there are ways, that's mostly, they exploit the ignorance of artists. The artist doesn't know any better, and they think, oh, I'm going to get a $100,000 check. Wow, I never made that much money in one moment in my life. I never made that much money in 1 year in my life. And then they get a $100K check, and they're like, wow, this is awesome. And then the record sells 50 million copies, and the record label makes millions of dollars, and you're like, oh shit, like 100K is nothing, and so that's not a that's a education problem. That's that's a technicality that they're exploiting you. And so you need to find people that you can trust. And I think that's one thing like Webs of Trust help with, is you can say, okay, how do these record labels all compare to each other? Who trusts these labels? Which artists are getting the most compensation? The more information people share about who they trust and why they trust, the more context you can create to have a more efficient and more aligned marketplace.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I just, you're right. It all depends on the individual's situation and also their education going in. Do you sign a shitty contract, or do you actually do your due diligence with people you trust? Go through that. I just, as usual, I guess being very short-minded in that sense. The fact that they're able to get to the point where they can abuse an artist or abuse a creator in all types of arenas. I mean, video games they're just like stealing, creativity from artists. Streaming is another arena where it's just stealing a bunch. But you're right. I guess it's just a balance. I guess that also helps.
That's why we need webs of trust, man. Because with the web of trust, what happens is reputation isn't very sticky because nobody actually measures very well and nobody even bothers to like share when they do measure. So like when an artist gets fucked over, well, that artist only has $100,000. He doesn't have much of a platform to be able to complain. And if he tries to record a song about complaining about his label, they're not going to promote it. And so it's like you only have so much ability to spread the reputation of somebody. And most of the review systems we have and things like rating systems that we have at the moment, they're all centralized. So they're all very censorable. They're all very biased. They're you saw like with I forgot which platform it was, but one of these crowdfunding platforms, like during the time that we were having the Canadian truckers and the freedom truckers and such, they were trying to get donations from these crowdfunding platforms, and they got censored ultimately. And then Trustpilot, one of the review sites, they started censoring the reviews because they had this influx of bad reviews for this crowdfunding website. But what's the point? Like, if you can't actually know the truth, how do you ever, know the real reputation of somebody? And why would there ever be consequences for behaving badly? You might as well just be a criminal because it's the only way to compete in a world of criminals. And I think that having, a better web of trust will create more accountability and give people a better way to communicate information and show and prove that the information that you're getting about other people is even trustworthy. Because I'm not going to care what you think about a record label if, for example, you have no reputation with anyone for any reason. I'm just going to think you're just some anonymous nobody. But if you're a former artist that is really popular and has a reputation and has a good reputation for other reasons, then I might listen, And so we have to be able to share this information with each other.
Yeah. And I don't know how freely people are sharing information now. I tend to think in Bitcoin is more than in other arenas, but I don't know, man. People kind of feel that if they give away their quote unquote secret, that it's over for them, instead of believing that they can come up with more clever ideas.
There are people who want the game to be fair, and there are people who want to find out how they can cheat the game. And that's I think there are two kinds of people, and that's like the line that you split people on. Like this is good and evil. This is people that want everything to be fair and they want competition, cooperation to be like a kind of a virtuous thing. And there are people who want to figure out what the angles are, and people who want to exploit ignorance and exploit people.
Oh yeah, well said, man. That nails that whole point of the conversation in extremely well. I got one more question for you, John, and this one is, could be long-winded, could not. It's up to you how you want to answer it. And back to the beginning when I said, the longer somebody has been in Bitcoin, the more interesting their takes and the more fascinating their story is. I've been curious about this whole trend lately of like institutions need to come in order to make Bitcoin be successful. That comes with a boatload of regulations. What's your take on that? Because the more these big institutions come in, yeah, I know number go up, but the more, away from the narrative of Bitcoin we get, in my opinion. And I wanted to get your opinion on that.
So I have opinions on this, but just to make sure I answer you properly, can you give me an example of what you consider an institution? I think generally as whales, right? So like big pocket people that are trying to come in, like these big, stock exchange traded minor companies that are coming in. And then the argument for those people coming in with the big pockets is, well, it's okay because we need them. They're the ones that are going to make this thing go to the moon. And I disagree with that wholeheartedly. Yeah, I think that I agree with you. I could make an argument for both sides just to be fair, but I do agree with you. In other words, like, there are two kinds of people. There are people who want to exploit people, and there are people who want to make the game fair. And the people that see that, like, when a public mining company is going to spend a bunch of money, or UST, this new stable coin / pseudo Ponzi scheme thing with Luna coin and all this. Oh, he's buying $1 billion of Bitcoin. Like, when they see that somebody's going to pump their bags, they're happy, initially for that, to exploit that person and get their bags pumped. But Bitcoin, this kind of behavior is fleeting. Somebody's going to sell those bags eventually, and it's not going to be you. Most likely, it's going to be them. Right. And so, and it creates centralization, which creates imbalanced amount of influence in one way or another. And it, like you said, it brings regulation. It makes regulation enter the picture. And so, for example, not to criticize Michael Saylor in any horrible way, but he promotes the leveraging of Bitcoin. He promotes, borrowing money and buying Bitcoin with it and getting institutions to do this. And there are certain tax advantages to behaving this way, et cetera. And there are also people who promote, for example, using an IRA to buy Bitcoin. And
don't get me started on that. Go ahead.
Basically using government constructions to kind of leverage Bitcoin in some way or another. All of these things are okay while the government isn't noticing and while the government is not changing. But eventually these things become overweight and they get the attention of the government. And you get people like, for example, Janet Yellen saying she wants to tax unrealized gains. And so what happens if these loopholes become, attack points for the government? They say, oh, we have $60 billion of Americans have $60 billion in Bitcoin IRAs. Let's tax those fuckers. You know what I mean? Like, right. Let's remove the advantage of the IRA, or let's make sure that we keep track and tax the fuck out of them whenever they do realize that IRA. Like, you just become like a known target. They know you have that much Bitcoin. They know what it's worth. They know when you bought it, and they know when you sell it. And so it's like you just become, involved with the government. And my advice usually with people is liquidate everything. Liquidate your 401k, liquidate your IRAs, get the fuck out of every government program, because you can never beat the Bitcoin price. I liquidated everything I had in that regard in 2016, 2015. The Bitcoin price has gone up tremendously since then. And it was only a few $1,000s I had in those things, but a few $1,000s back then was, multiple Bitcoins, and I'm granted I didn't hold Bitcoin the way I should have since then, but, just narrowing down the conversation to something like this, you can see how, who cares if you get a tax benefit by using an IRA when you can just fucking buy Bitcoin with that? Who cares if you get a 401k and you take a little bit of a tax hit if you cash it out? You can get Bitcoin that you can hold yourself right now. And that Bitcoin is probably going to appreciate significantly and significantly more than whatever advantage you're getting by involving the government. And so, yeah, I think that when you bring people like Saylor into the mix, you invite more government participation into the situation. And you invite, he also thinks that he feels the need to talk good about the dollar and say that dollar is the currency and Bitcoin is the store of value. And so he also will talk about regulatory clarity, and people, I don't know how much he talks about that, but people like him will talk about this, and you'll start getting ESG miners and ETF. People want there to be more regulation, so there's more regulatory clarity so we can have an ETF. And you just end up putting everything more and more into the system we're trying to dismantle. And that's not progress. It's not Bitcoin progress.
Yeah, no, you said it more eloquently, of course, but yeah, I'm on that same thing. Contrary to, having the unchained position and the IRAs and stuff, I think it doesn't make sense to put rules on money that it's not supposed to have rules on it. And then, just to make it more, all the hard work that you did, that I did, and anybody that has actually tried to learn and go down the rabbit hole and get better with this, you're basically just saying that doesn't mean shit by making it more comfy and more friendly with regulation to get, big pockets to come in. And I think that's just completely upside down. I think it just puts more stress, on us, the people that are actually trying to do the work and push it forward. And going back slightly to the conversation with Cash App and you guys, I think this is like a stepchild conversation out of that, is that, we can't make things better for the big pockets or more comfortable when we got so many people that are doing the heavy lifting and the hard work now. Those people doing the heavy lifting and the hard work should be the ones that are seeing the incentive, not the bag pumpers or the regulators and all that. But
I'll give you another perspective that I think
Sure.
is interesting, which is I talked about two kinds of people, the people who exploit people and people who try to make the game fair and play the game fair. The problem with government programs is what you call a tax benefit or what you call, a loophole or, some sort of discount. The only way the government gets resources is by taking it from people. And so that means that when you save money, somebody else paid for that. And so you're exploiting people when you take advantage of government programs. You're just saying, in order to either not pay my share that I'm supposed to, or to get, like, for example, like the payouts that they did with COVID when they sent everybody, I don't know, $600, $1,200, whatever it was, depending on your family and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. Like, that's money they had to take from someone. They didn't that's not revenue. It didn't come from, providing a service. It's just literally money that they printed more money, which meant that it disproportionately gets taken from someone and given to someone else. And there's no way to proportionally devalue everybody and also have a benefit. If everybody loses, if everybody's proportionately taking money from and then proportionally giving money back, there's no gain. There's, you know what I mean? So in order for it to actually matter, you have to take money from somebody to get those advantages. And so when you participate in a government program for a personal advantage, or when whether it be a tax write-off or some kind of subsidy or anything like that, whenever you take advantage of a government program, you're literally taking money from somebody else to accomplish that goal. And is that how you want to live your life? I don't know.
Man, so many gems in this conversation, man. You're killing it. John, just to respect your time, please let the listeners know where they can follow Synonym, where they can follow you, and anywhere else you want to send them, please.
No problem. So yeah, if you want to follow me, I am Bitcoin Error Log on Twitter. For the company, we are synonym_TO, synonym2 on Twitter, and our website is synonym.to, synonym.to. And I guess, we have Telegram channels, other information you can find on the website. We're going to be releasing our Blocktank LSP product in about 2 weeks from now. And we have a lot of stuff that we're going to be, releasing open source code, more products, and we're hiring. And you can go to Bitcoiner Jobs or our website to look at, what current positions we have open. We're always probably going to be hiring for a while for various roles. And just, I appreciate anybody's consideration and trying to learn what we're trying to do and try on the things that we're making. And, if anybody ever has questions, just let us know.
Yeah, listeners, if this whole conversation hasn't been proof enough that you need to check out what John and Synonym got going on, then I guess you're not going to make it. It's the easy, dumb way to say it. But John, thank you for everything you've done, not only, in your earlier in Bitcoin, but what you continue to do every single day and pushing it forward and keeping this mission alive. I'm nowhere near, obviously, developer level or exploring these things. I'm actually trying to figure out how I can best contribute to Bitcoin as well. But I appreciate the cross bearers, if that makes any sense. And I consider you to be one of those. Thanks.
Well, thanks so much for having me. Thanks so much for giving me the chance to expose my experience and our information to your audience. And it's been a pleasure.
Yeah. All right, guys, that wraps up episode 62 with John. Check us out on Bitcoin TV. We try to get, as many people away from the YouTube algorithm as possible. We are on YouTube if that's more of your thing, but why not try something new? Head on over to Bitcoin TV. You get to see all these episodes. Same thing on the podcasting, on the audio standpoint. Check us out on Fountain app. Check us out on Breeze. Stream us some sats. That's how we're able to keep the lights on here and be able to stay ad-free, which is something that we're dedicated to here on Talking in Bits. But if you don't have any of those platforms and still just want to soak up this knowledge, you can check us out on the legacy platforms like Apple, Spotify, all those other good places. I appreciate you guys as always, and I'll see you next week. Take care.